Elly De La Cruz and Noelvi Marte led the way as the Cincinnati Reds lineup did the heavy lifting for once, and the Reds got another series dub.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Reds podcast. My name is Jeff Carr, and I'm a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan. I've been podcasting about this team for for 7 seasons now, and I'm glad that you're alongside me here today. Locked On Reds is, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team, your Cincinnati Reds, every single day. And on today's podcast, we are going to get into a little bit later on why Sal Stewart may be coming up very soon, and it's all because of what happened on Tuesday. In a few minutes, we're going to discuss the weird bullpen usage that Terry Francona has had lately and put a few guys' seasons into perspective. But I will begin with the night the lineup had, as it was the reason that the Reds won. That's all coming up on today's Locked On Reds podcast that is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. All right, we're going to begin with the lineup because the lineup went and did it. The lineup went and got that win on Tuesday, scoring 6 runs. And really, the timely at-bats in the ninth is what made the difference. On top of the fact that Noelvi Marte and Elly De La Cruz are looking real good. 2 different ways when it comes to those 2 guys. But let's start with that 9th inning because the 9th inning is what the Reds want to be. They continue to tell us that they're not a big bopping lineup. They're not going to push for home runs. They are going to push for well drawn out at bats with line drive hits and solid contact and things like that. It's what they got. That's what they did against Kenley Jansen because you had a couple of really good at-bats in this inning. Jose Trevino battled and got a single. Key Brian Hayes battled, got a walk. Then you had Will Benson come in as a pinch hit for Matt McLain. We'll talk about Matt McLain a little bit later on in the show. I know a lot of people just continue to belabor that point, but we'll get to that later on. But Will Benson pinch hits and gets a walk. He's got 2 walks since he's been called back up, and I think I saw a stat from Charlie Goldsmith that he had like 1 walk in 81 plate appearances before he got sent down. So clearly the message has been received by Will Benson. You gotta get them walks. He got a big one against Kenley Jansen to load the bases. TJ Friedl comes up with a very nice sac fly on the very first pitch that he saw. Then Gavin Lux laces a single that you get 2 runs in the 9th inning, and boom! Something that the Reds lineup hasn't done consistently enough this year. When they need to score, they do. And I get it. It's the Angels. The Angels are not a team that the Reds are fighting against. The Reds are not a team, or the Angels are not a team that are really fighting for a playoff spot in the American League. All the more reason to go out and do the thing. Because if you can't do it against the Angels, what business do you have doing it against a team that's going to be more serious than them? So it was good to see the way this lineup band together. But I said this going into the Angels series, and I continue to say it as we head into the series finale here on Wednesday, and I think this even holds true when the Reds go to Arizona. Score 4. 4 or more. And no, I'm not about to do a Blake Maislin ad, but get at least 4 runs, because after winning last night's game, the Reds have improved their record this season to 55-18 when they score at least 4 runs. 55-18. That's insane. And then conversely, scoring 3 or less basically flip that. That's the big difference here is you got to get the 4 when it comes to this lineup, and they've done a really good job these last 2 days. But really, here recently, especially here in LA, it's been Elly De La Cruz's renaissance of speed. And it's not necessarily a stolen base. Like, he's not stealing bases. He's scoring from first, and he did it twice. In fact, Matt Vasgersian on the Los Angeles Angels broadcast said that. He said if it not for Elly De La Cruz, that would have been a 2-1 ball game going into the 7th inning where the Angels scored a couple of times and brought it within 1, and then they tied it in the 8th inning. But because of Elly, because of his speed, the Reds were up 4-1. And I say that because the 2 hits that he scored on that Miguel Andujar put into the outfield were soft line drives. They were not the kind of line drives that are going to break some sort of exit velocity radar. You know, nobody's going to be talking about how amazing Miguel Andujar hit that line drive into left field for the first run. That's the fun thing about that one too. He hit a soft line drive into left field that Elly scored from first on. And then the second time he scored from first was a liner into the gap in right center that was cut off before it got really deep. Like Andujar got singles on both of these and advanced on the throw. On the second one, they just threw it to second base. They didn't even try to throw Elly out at the plate. They're like, nah. Elly ran. Nah, he's going to make it. He's going to score. And maybe that's the reason why Will Benson tried to score on Gavin Lux's single in the 8th inning. He ended up getting thrown out at home by a long shot. I mean, he was out by a mile and into the inning, and we were all kind of wondering why he got sent. I think J.R. House was kind of like, you know what, if you feel it, take it. Because right now we're kind of killing this Angels outfield, with the asterisk being that it was Elly that was killing the Angels outfield. Although, to be fair, the sac fly that scored the Reds' go-ahead run in the 9th inning, Jose Trevino was on third base. So, yeah, not exactly a burner there. But still, it was great to see that speed from Elly De La Cruz. And then you have Noelvi Marte. He hit the home run earlier on in the ballgame to tie the game at 1, because the Angels went up 1-0 in this one. Reds did not score first. Usually not a good day when the Reds don't score first, but they were able to win in a game that happened. But he hits a solo shot to dead center field, and he has been on a tear. He's now on a 10-game hitting streak. And he's doing this against right-handed pitching. It's not as if he is just getting, picking his spots and he's only hitting lefties, or, there's not like a situational asterisk put next to Noelvi Marte right now. He's just been good. In fact, there's a statistic that even going into last night's game, and this went up, by the way, but going into last night's game, he had a .591 slugging percentage against right-handed pitching this year, and that ranks 3rd in all of Major League Baseball, only behind Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton. Like, those two guys make sense. Noelvi Marte is in the same sentence as Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton when it comes to slugging against right-handed pitching. Righty on righty. You love to see that. Plus, and the thing that lets me know that this is real from Noelvi Marte, I tweeted this last night, if you follow me at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. But the thing that makes me know that this is real is the fact that he has just slashed his strikeout rate. Last year, he was striking out at a 31% rate. This year, it's down to 19%. And he did strike out later on in the ballgame, but it was a strikeout looking, he didn't look comfortable at the plate. And I don't belabor him at all on that. He's had some good at-bats here recently. But a multi-hit game for him, and he's been looking so good. The kind of guy that not only you can't take him out of the order, but at the same time, maybe move him up in the order. Like maybe you have a 1-2-3 punch with Elly, Miguel Andujar, and Noelvi Marte. And I don't know what that order is. Is it Elly batting second, Marte batting third, Andujar batting fourth? Or is it Elly third, Marte fourth, Andujar fifth? I don't know, but those 3 guys really seem to be driving this lineup right now. You're seeing a little bit of bounce back from Austin Hayes and guys like that, but those are the 3 guys. They're pushing it forward. I just love to see this, though. But kind of even going back to that 9th inning for a moment, I found this intriguing. This was just the 7th game that the Reds have played where they were tied going into the 9th inning. And it's only their 3rd win. They're 3-4 in that situation there. And on the whole, it's so weird because the games where they score 3 runs or less, or the games where they score 1 or 2 runs or something like that, I see people going crazy on Reds Twitter and on Reddit and all this other stuff, talking about how horrible this lineup is. They're averaging 4.55 runs per game. they're 11th in Major League Baseball in runs per game. Right where you need to be. Look, they're to have a top 10 lineup would be amazing with the pitching staff that they have, but it's great to see that the lineup can just go out and get you a win like they did on Tuesday night. But on Tuesday night, there was something else about the game because Tito's bullpen usage has been head-scratchy to most these last two nights. But I see the vision, and I'll tell you why next. The next time you're thinking of going down to the ballpark, you got to use Game Time just like I do. Anytime I go to a Reds game, whether it be at home here in Cincinnati or if I'm following them on the road, I use Game Time. I did this when I went to San Francisco earlier this year. Game Time makes it so easy, whether you are intimately familiar with your favorite team's ballpark or you're going to a brand new place. They show you your view from your seat, so they take the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're going to show you exactly what you're looking for. Plus, they're going to give you the all-in pricing, so there's not going to be any added fees that surprise you and scare you and make you go, what? That's not a deal. Game Time helps you find the best deal there is. And with the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, if you download the app today and create an account and use that promo code LOCKEDONMLB, you'll save $20 off your first purchase. So, no guesswork. Great prices and an extra $20 off. What are you waiting for? Download the app today. And like I said, use that code LOCKEDONMLB to get $20 off your first purchase, because Game Time has the last minute deals at the lowest prices guaranteed. If you are not a subscriber of the Locked On Reds podcast, I encourage you to do so. Become an everydayer by hitting that subscribe button. Thank you to our everydayers out there who make Locked On Reds part of your everyday routine. We're with you all throughout the rest of the season, every single day here on the Locked On Reds podcast. And you've also got Tim Daniel on the Reds postcast going live at the end of every ball game. So make sure you hit that subscribe button today. All right, so last night there was a little bit of interestingness because I didn't mention the fact that Hunter Greene pitched awesomely, and I think that it was a very good start. It could have been a great start had he finished that seventh inning. He got to start the seventh inning, quickly gave up a home run to Joe Adell, got an out, and then gave up a double, and then they pulled him. I kind of wanted to see Tito let him work through that, because it feels like, yeah, it's just his second start back from the IL, but this felt like the start that you could kind of let him loose. And by the reasoning of how I'm viewing what Terry Francona is doing with his bullpen, like Terry Francona he's trying to use every part of the bullpen right now, right? You always hear like people talking about cooking, so, use every part of the animal, well, yeah, whatever. Terry Francona is trying to use every part of this Reds bullpen as much as he possibly can, because if he doesn't, the key members of this bullpen are just going to be completely flattened by the time that they get to the really important part of September. And so I understand why we're seeing Luis May, although I do not want to see him on back-to-back days the rest of the season. That is such a gamble. And we saw why, because he gave up the lead in the eighth inning. But it's such a gamble. And that's kind of why I go back to, I would have liked to have seen Hunter Greene pitch through the seventh inning, because then you pitch Graham Ashcraft in the eighth inning, and then you pitch Tony Santillan in the ninth. And you don't have to go to Luis May. But I digress. Whatever. It's important to note, though, when you look at this bullpen, why Tito is managing the way that he's managing it. Because there are three relievers that we trust, right? Like, I feel I'm okay putting Scott Barlow in the A group. I'm sure Steve might disagree with me, and we can debate this on an episode later on this week. It's just me today. Steve will be back tomorrow. But I really feel like it's Emilio Pagán, it's Tony Santillan, which is why I'm wearing his t-shirt. Got his fourth save last night. And it's Scott Barlow. And when you consider how much those guys have worked this year, that's why Tito is gambling with the more volatile relief pitchers. I mean, Tony Santillan, especially after last night, leads Major League Baseball with 63 appearances this year. He was tied with Tyler Rogers, who, he pitched in San Francisco early on. He's been pitching with the Mets here since the trade deadline. He was tied there, so he has 63. Scott Barlow's in third with 61 appearances. So had he pitched yesterday, he'd be tied with Tyler Rogers for second. And these guys are just pitching every other day. And every so often I will just really over exaggerate and say, 475 appearances for Tony Santillan. But it feels like that. It feels like every time there's a big moment, they're bringing in Tony Santillan, they're bringing in Scott Barlow to shut the door. And then you got Emilio Pagán, who, when it comes to appearances, is not near the top, but he leads the National League in games finished. Not saves, but just the number of times that he is the final pitcher of the game for the Reds. He has 44 of those. Nobody else in the National League has more. And even in games when they're not necessarily save situations, when are the highest stress innings for relief pitchers? Usually the ninth inning. There's some times where it's not the ninth inning, and we talk about that a lot, where it's not always the toughest spot of the game. But if you're finishing 44 games in a season to this point on August 20th, that means you've pitched in a lot of high leverage spots. And so Tito knows that. Tito understands that that's where these guys are, and he knows that they're going to burn out if he doesn't use everybody else, if he doesn't figure out a way to get Luis May in here, if he doesn't figure out, now that they have Connor Phillips up here instead of Joe LaSorsa, thankfully, if he doesn't figure out a time to get Connor Phillips in there and burn him. Because, look, I get it. There are high leverage guys and there are not high leverage guys, right? But when you're the Reds, there are not a whole lot of times that you're facing low leverage situations this year. We just mentioned the Reds are 11th in runs per game at 4.55, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're just rolling out of bed and scoring 6 runs every day. Obviously, we've known those games where they don't. And so you need those high-stress pitches from your most trustworthy guy. So when you think you've got an opportunity, like what the Angels should be, that's when Tito can kind of manage with the big picture in mind. This is the hard part for us to see, especially during the baseball season, because we as fans evaluate on the micro. If somebody strikes out at that point, boy, he's in the doghouse. If there's a relief pitcher that comes in and gives up a run, boy, oh boy. And that's where everybody's at with Graham Ashcraft right now. They see Graham Ashcraft come in and give up a run, and they think that's who he is. Let me tell you right now, that's not who he is this year. And this surprised me, because I have been a little bit critical of Graham Ashcraft this year. I thought moving him to the bullpen would make him a bona fide closer candidate from the get-go. And while there have definitely been some roller coaster rides with him this year, he's not been as bad as people think. He came in and he gave up an inherited runner last night in the 7th inning. He relieved Hunter Green. Hunter Green had left the guy on second base. Graham Ashcraft allowed that guy to come around and score. That was the only runner that scored while Ashcraft was pitching. So that does not get charged to his ERA. That gets charged to Hunter Green's. But that is just the 4th inherited runner all year to score on Graham Ashcraft. This is a statistic that you hear some broadcasters talk about. You hear some really, or you read some really smart writers breaking this down. And I try to incorporate it when I can. But looking at inherited runners, Graham Ashcraft has inherited 21 total runners this year, and he's allowed 4 of them to score. That percentage is 19%. And that rate is well better than league average. Well better than league. That's probably not a word. Not great English there. It's my second language. But it's better than league average. League average is 34%. Graham Ashcraft is 19%. And then, when you look at some other numbers, because the 3.79 ERA is solid, but you would like to see it be a little bit lower as a relief pitcher, his fielding independent pitching, his FIP, says that he's actually getting unlucky. His FIP is 2.8 right now. And one of the biggest reasons why, or two of the biggest reasons why, are luck stats. Batting average on balls in play, and then runners left on base, the percentage of runners left on base. He has a BABIP of 327 against him, where league average is 290. And he is only stranding 63% of the runners that he allows. League average for that is 72%. So if those were just league average, you're seeing his ERA drop. You're probably not seeing him give up even as many inherited runners as he's allowed, and that's only 4, like I mentioned. The only thing that really is just alarming, and it's not even alarming. Like, he could walk less people. But we know this, and I always say this, the best and most important pitch for Graham Ashcraft is strike one, making sure that is the first pitch, because when it starts out 0-1, man, he is going. When it starts out 1-0, buckle up. But it's not as bad as Luis May. It's not as bad as Connor Phillips. It's not as bad as some other people. So I think when you look at the whole picture on Graham Ashcraft, he's much better than we think he is. And we do this thing in the micro where we're just like, man, they gave it up right then. They must be horrible all year. They've been horrible. Tito manages in the full picture as well. That's what he's doing with his bullpen. And I get it. Because, I mean, Luis May, he's a break glass in case of emergency guy, and he's had to use him in back-to-back days, and I do not support that idea. But I see why he did it. Because Emilio Pagán has not pitched these last 2 days. That means that even if he pitches today, it would just be the 7th time in the 20 days of August. The lowest amount of times he's pitched in a month has been 9, and that was in June. And then you have Tony Santillan, who last night pitched his 9th appearance in the month of August. Scott Barlow 2 nights ago pitched his 9th appearance in the month of August. Tito is trying to make sure that these guys are as fresh as they can possibly be down the stretch. And in order to do that, you've got to make some interesting bullpen decisions. I don't think that makes him a bad manager for it. That just means he's seen a broader picture that we aren't. But there was an interesting development yesterday with Sal Stewart. Something that makes me believe he's coming up soon. If you can't watch the podcast on YouTube, you can always listen to us on your favorite podcast app. We're on all of them out there. Go check us out today. All right, Sal Stewart in Louisville yesterday did something that makes me believe his call-up is imminent. I don't know if it's tomorrow. I think it's likely it's September. So September 1st, Sal Stewart is in Cincinnati. And while we have talked about this as, not necessarily thinking that it would happen so quickly, he has really forced the Reds' hand. I mean, he's killing it. Yesterday, he went 0 for. He went 0 for 3 with a walk and 2 strikeouts. He's still hitting over 300, and his OPS is still over 1,000 in AAA because he's just been that good. But the Bats started Sal Stewart at first base. That was the first time, and I made sure to do my research on this one, at least according to Fangraphs and trying to look as many as I could on like game logs and stuff like that. It's the first time at any level in the minor leagues that Sal Stewart has played first base. There's only one reason that they're doing that. Just trying to figure out exactly where he can and can't play. And if he's passable, if he's even solidly average, maybe even below average at a given position, can they put him there and put him in the lineup? And this is also curious because he played first base on a day that Christian Encarnacion Strand started for the Bats, and CES played third. That's Sal Stewart's main position. That's the one that he's played the most at. And they said, you know what? Let's flip him. See what we got here. Because you call him up in September, it's not so he can sit on the bench and get a handful of at-bats and call it a cup of coffee and we'll see you next year. I think they plan to do a little bit more with Sal Stewart. So how's that work? How's he fit? If they're okay, and look, we know the Cincinnati Reds. They don't need to see a whole lot to be okay putting a guy at a certain position. But if they've seen enough to feel okay about putting Sal Stewart at first base, you could put him at first, you can move Steer to second, and then left field could be either Hayes or Anderhar, and whoever's not there is DHing. I'd be more than fine with that. I mean, that's a pretty good left-handed pitcher lineup right there, assuming that Sal Stewart can be pretty solid. Here's the other part about that, right, though? Because, like, I keep seeing different people talking about, let's get Matt McLain down to AAA. There's too many guys in AAA that are just killing it right now. They need to be up here. He needs to be down there. AAA performance does not equal Major League performance. There are times that I make a take, and I'm not really 100% sure about it, but I'm 110% sure. And it is based on information that I have received from other people that know minor league baseball far better than I ever will. AAA performance does not equal Major League performance. So just because you see somebody with a similar, with a seemingly desirable batting average or a seemingly desirable OPS in AAA, that means nothing for his Major League production. We don't know who Sal Stewart is in terms of being a major leaguer. You're talking about a guy that's going to be coming up in the middle of a pennant race, not a pennant race, but a wild card chase, a playoff chase, high stress situations. Welcome to the big leagues, kid. Time for you to show up. Let's see what you got. We really think that's going to be better on the word go than Matt McLain? I get it. Matt McLain's in a slump right now, and he got a hit yesterday, but then he got thrown out trying to steal second. He's been in a bad way. It feels like for as much good as he could possibly do in one game, he almost completely equals that with something bad. He's just been in a slump. And we've said it before. We know where he's at right now. He's going through the same thing that Tyler Stevenson went through in 2023. And we think that the only way that he's going to push through it is to push through it at the major league level. You don't see how going down to AAA and succeeding down there helps him up here. Ask Rhys Hines how that works. Ask Will Benson. I get it, Will Benson has a couple of walks since he came up, but it's not as if Will Benson has hit anywhere near as well in the majors as he has in AAA. Neither has Rhys Hines. Those guys look like absolute world beaters. All-star, perennial, crazy guys down in AAA. And they have a hard time sticking in the majors. So don't do this with Sal Stewart. If he comes up, which he should be, like based on how they're using him in AAA, I think he's going to be up in September, and we should see him play a bit. I don't think that means, and that's another reason why I think it's September, they're not going to send down Matt McLain to bring him up. Matt McLain will probably just sit a little bit more in September. But he's got to work through it in the major leagues. I still maintain that. I have not changed after one day. I saw people asking me that on Twitter. I haven't changed my stance on Matt McLain after one day. I mean, I haven't changed my stance on him. I did change my stance on him because earlier on in the season I said you should send him down. And then he started to figure some things out, not the power, but the average and the on base and all that other stuff. And now he's gone back on another slump. But he's working through something. I see it. You let guys work through it on the major leagues. And other guys are picking it up for him. That's why he's hitting 9th right now. Tito understands where he's at. And Tito understands what he needs. I think that's what we're seeing here. But Sal Stewart looks like he's going to be up in the major leagues here in September. I'd be excited to see that because he really has set Louisville on fire. So I have high hopes. But I don't have high expectations. I think we need to make that clear and set expectations for a guy as opposed to what hopes are. You can have hopes for a guy to succeed, but not expect him to just ball out as soon as he gets here to the majors. But that'd be kind of fun, though, wouldn't it? That'd be a lot of fun. But that's where we're going to end today's Locked On Reds podcast. Thank you so much for checking out the show today. Like I mentioned, Steve will be back tomorrow, and we will wrap up this Angels series and look ahead to the weekend as the Reds head to the desert to face the Arizona Diamondbacks. Hopefully, after getting a sweep here today. We'll see what happens there. But we got Nick Martinez on the mound going up against the best pitcher for the Angels in Yusei Kikuchi, so this could be a tough test. We'll see how the Reds fare. But until tomorrow, you always know that we will be Locked On Reds every single day.